As alarms rang out through every corridor, the lower hangar bay of the Krythian flagship shook violently. Kyle Foster let go of his cleaning rag and grabbed onto the nearest support beam to keep himself steady. He had been cleaning up coolant leaks from the deck plating for the last 3 hours, which was just another boring maintenance shift on an alien warship. But the next sound made his heart race. A loud noise. Not just any roar, but one so deep and primal that it shook his ribcage and made his teeth hurt. Kyle had been working on spaceships for 15 years. He had heard a lot of weird sounds. This was not the same. This was anger mixed with something else. Something that sounded a lot like pain. "All personnel leave Deck 7 right away," the station's automatic translator said in his ear. "The Queen's War Dragon isn't working right. Vexthor has broken down again." Kyle's eyes got big. Vexthor. Everyone on board the ship knew that name. The Queen's personal war dragon was thought to be the most dangerous weapon in the whole Krythian fleet. A living nightmare that had wiped out rebel fleets and taken over whole planetary systems. And now it was broken. The deck beneath his feet shook again. Kyle grabbed the railing of the observation window and pulled himself up so he could see inside the upper containment bay. For a moment he forgot how to breathe when he saw what he saw. Kyle had never seen anything like the creature thrashing around inside the huge reinforced chamber. Vexthor was as big as a cargo ship and had scales all over it that looked like polished black glass. There were plasma vents along its spine that glowed white-hot, like the cores of engines that were too hot. Its tail alone could have brought down a building. Every move sent shockwaves through the containment field, which kept it locked up. At least 20 elite Krythian beastmasters in ceremonial armor stood around the chamber. They were focused on the dragon with their hands raised and their faces twisted. Kyle knew they were sending psionic commands to the creature's mind to try to get it to do what they wanted. He had seen them do it before in training. It always worked. But now it wasn't working. Not at all. Vexthor hit the containment field with its huge body again. The energy barrier blinked. There were small cracks in the reinforced glass of the observation window. Kyle heard the beastmasters yelling in a panic. They were losing their grip. Then she got there. Queen Velmara came into the bay like a storm that had taken shape. The emergency lights hit her crystal crown and scattered them like broken diamonds. The robes behind her moved as if they were alive. Kyle had only met the Queen once before when he started working there 6 months ago. She was scary even when she was calm. Now, with her face twisted in a way that looked like she was about to panic, she was completely terrifying. "Do what I say." The Queen's voice echoed through the room, thanks to her natural psychic presence. Even though the words weren't aimed at Kyle, they hit him like a physical force. "Vexthor, do what your mistress says. I command you." The dragon's answer was to roar even louder and hit the containment field with even more force. The cracks in the window of the observation room got bigger. The guards started to back off. Some of the beastmasters looked like they were going to run. Kyle was getting more and more confused as he watched all of this. Things weren't right. He had worked with machines his whole adult life, learning how to tell when they were broken and why. And right now, his gut told him that everyone was worried about the wrong thing. He paid close attention to what was going on even though there were loud noises. There. That noise. A high-pitched whine came from the dragon's left side. Kyle had heard that exact sound 100 times before when hydraulic systems broke down. The pitch, the beat, and how it spiked when Vexthor moved a certain way. Kyle said to himself, "It's in pain." Then louder, "The dragon is hurt." In the middle of all the noise, no one heard him. The Queen was yelling orders. The beastmasters were chanting in their own language. As a last resort, guards were putting up plasma cannons. None of them had thought to ask why the dragon was acting this way because they were all so focused on using force to control it. Kyle saw his toolkit on the deck where he had left it. He watched the dragon thrash around in pain. He looked at the emergency access panel that was next to the entrance to the containment field. That door would open for him because of his maintenance credentials. He was allowed to go to almost any part of the ship to fix things. This was totally crazy. People died in really horrible ways because of decisions like this. Kyle's wife was on Earth Station 12. Every year he sent birthday cards to his 2 nephews. He lived a quiet, safe, and boring life fixing things that broke. But he also couldn't just stand there and watch a living thing suffer when he knew he could help. Kyle picked up his tools and walked to the entrance of the containment field. A Krythian guard with a plasma rifle raised immediately blocked his way. "Human, you are not allowed to come near. Back off or I'll shoot." Kyle said, "That creature has a hydraulic coupling leak on its port side." He kept his voice steady even though his heart was racing. "It's in pain. If it can't think past the pain, your psychic commands won't work." The guard looked like he didn't know what to do. Hydraulic coupling? The dragon is a mix of biology and mechanics. It doesn't have simple. Yes, it does. Listen. Kyle pointed to the dragon. Do you hear that whine? That means the pressure valve isn't working. The coupling pinches every time it moves its left foreleg, sending pain all over its nervous system. I've fixed that same problem with ship landing gear dozens of times. The Queen's eyes suddenly focused on Kyle. He could feel the weight of her gaze on his head like a physical pressure. She moved toward him with terrifying grace, and for a moment Kyle thought he was going to die. You think you can help Vexthor? Her voice was so cold that it could freeze helium. I can fix the leak in the hydraulic system. I can't promise that it will stop hurting completely, but at least it won't hurt all the time. The Queen looked at him for what felt like a long time. Vexthor's roars were getting quieter all around them. The dragon was getting tired. If the containment field failed now, it would probably go crazy and destroy the whole ship. The Queen suddenly said, "Let him go. If he fails, he dies anyway when Vexthor breaks free and kills us all." The guard moved out of the way. Kyle's hands were very steady as he walked up to the emergency override panel, even though his legs felt like jelly. The panel turned green and his maintenance credentials beeped. The containment field sparkled and opened just enough for a person to get through. Kyle entered the chamber with the most dangerous weapon in the Krythian Empire. The field closed behind him with a sound like a coffin closing. Vexthor's huge head turned right away to look at him. The dragon's mouth opened, and Kyle could see rows of teeth that were as long as his forearm. Plasma dripped from its mouth and hissed when it hit the metal floor. The creature's eyes were pure gold with vertical pupils, and they were fixed on Kyle with a predatory gaze. Kyle could feel the heat coming off the dragon's scales. You could smell the ozone coming from its plasma vents. I could feel the raw strength in those huge muscles. If those claws touched him, they would cut him in half. One blast of plasma breath would kill him right away. He took a deep breath, looked those strange eyes straight in the eye, and spoke in the same calm voice he used with scared animals on Earth. "Take it easy, big guy. I know it hurts. I can help." Kyle spoke in a low, steady voice, just like he did when his neighbor's old dog got its paw stuck in a fence back on Earth. His voice said he wasn't a threat and that he was there to help, not hurt. "Look, I know you're scared and angry right now, but I also know that you're in pain. That ache in your left side that makes you feel like you're on fire every time you move. I can make it stop." The huge head of Vexthor tilted a little. Those golden eyes watched Kyle's every little move. The dragon's nostrils opened up to smell him. Kyle could almost feel the creature weighing its options, to bite him in half or listen for a few more seconds. Kyle could hear Queen Velmara yelling something outside the containment field. The beast masters were chanting louder, probably to get the dragon to attack him or do what they said. Kyle didn't pay attention to any of it. There was only him and this huge, hurt creature that everyone saw as a weapon instead of a living thing. "I'm going to move now. Slow and steady. Okay, I'm just going to check the hydraulic coupling on your left side. The one that's been killing you." Kyle moved forward by one step. Vexthor's pupils shrank to slits. A low growl came from deep in the dragon's chest and shook the air like thunder. But the thing didn't attack. It just sat there and watched. One more step. Then one more. Kyle kept talking the whole time and his voice stayed calm and soothing. "I've been working on ships and stations for 15 years now. I've worked with all kinds of machines and problems. And you know what I've learned? The problem is usually something simple that everyone else missed, whether it's an engine, a hydraulic system, or even a living thing." He was close enough now to see the hydraulic fluid pooling under Vexthor's left front leg. You could see the dragon's biomechanical parts where the scales ended and the metal joints started. It was really interesting engineering. The Krythians had somehow combined living tissue with advanced machinery so well that it was hard to tell where one ended and the other began. But even the best engineering can go wrong. And this coupling had definitely broken. Kyle said softly, "There it is," and knelt down to get a better look. "Look at that? Your pressure valve is now completely loose. Every time you put weight on this leg, it pinches the fluid line and sends pain signals all over your body. It's no surprise that you've been going crazy." Kyle had never heard Vexthor make that noise before. It was like a whimper. The dragon really did change its weight, raising the hurt leg a little so Kyle could get to it more easily. That one gesture said it all. Even though he had been trained to be a weapon for years and years, some part of Vexthor knew that this strange little human was trying to help. Kyle took out his tools and got to work. His hands moved quickly and easily, like someone who had done this kind of repair 1,000 times before. Take the lock nut off. Carefully let the pressure out so it doesn't spray all over the place. Look for damage on the seal. Yes, it was there. The seal had broken, likely because it was old and under a lot of stress. "You've been in pain for a while now, haven't you?" Kyle kept talking while he worked, and he kept his tone casual. "Maybe days, maybe even weeks. And no one noticed because they were too busy telling you what to do to look at you. Too busy using you to care about you." He took a new seal out of his toolbox. It had a standard universal fitting that worked with almost any hydraulic system in the known galaxy. Thank goodness for parts that are the same. Kyle put the new seal in place and began to tighten everything back up. This happens all the time on old ships. Parts wear out, seals break, and no one notices until something really bad happens. My old boss used to say, preventive maintenance. Check the little things before they turn into big things. Kyle felt the change right away as he tightened the last bolt. The pressure went back to normal. The leak in the fluid stopped. The system was back to normal. But he could also feel Vexthor's whole body relax. The stress that had been building up in those huge muscles just went away. The dragon's plasma vents, which had been glowing white-hot, changed to a calmer blue color. Kyle sat back on his heels and used a rag to clean the hydraulic fluid off his hands. "Here you go, big guy. Everything is fixed. You should feel a lot better now." People in the Krythian Empire would talk about what happened next for generations. Vexthor lowered that huge head and moved with surprising gentleness for a creature that could knock down buildings. The dragon pushed its nose into Kyle's chest, right over his heart. There was no doubt about the gesture. It was the same thing that a dog did when it trusted someone. The same thing that happened when a horse and a rider became friends. Faith, thankfulness, connection. Kyle's hand went up on its own to touch the dragon's scales. Under his hand, they were warm and smoother than he thought they would be. He said softly, "You're welcome. You're a good boy, aren't you?" Just needed someone to really hear. There was a lot of noise outside the containment field. Kyle looked up and saw that every Krythian in the bay was staring at him with a look of shock, horror, or disbelief. The Beastmasters had stopped singing. The guards had put their guns down. The queen was so still that it looked like someone had turned her to stone. Queen Velmara's face was pale under her crystal crown. She opened and closed her mouth a few times before making a sound. Her voice shook a little when she finally spoke. "What kind of magic is this? What kind of mind trick did you use? What did you do to my dragon?" Kyle carefully stood up, making sure to keep one hand on Vexthor's neck. The dragon made a happy rumbling noise and closed its eyes, finally at peace. "No magic, your majesty. No tricks of the mind. I just fixed what was broken and showed him some respect. Talked to him like he was a person instead of a machine." He pointed to his tools. "Everything works better when you don't just yell at it, whether it's a ship engine or a creature like Vexthor. You need to listen sometimes. Listen up. Care about whether it hurts or not." One of the Beastmasters stepped forward, wearing ceremonial robes that showed he was important. "Not possible. Vexthor has been trained since he was born to only listen to royal psionic orders. No one from outside should be able to get close, let alone make a bond." Kyle said simply, "I didn't make anything. I just stopped him from hurting. That's it." Kyle couldn't quite figure out what the queen was feeling as her face changed. Yes, confusion. Maybe anger. But there was something underneath it all that looked a lot like fear. She stood up straight and her royal calmness came back like armor. "Guards, take the person to my throne room. Right away." Two huge Krythian soldiers walked toward Kyle. Vexthor's eyes opened wide as soon as they got within 10 feet. The dragon's head rose and a low growl came from deep within its chest. Plasma started to build up in its throat and it got brighter and brighter. The message was very clear. "Touch the person and die. Vexthor, stop." The queen's order sounded like a whip. The dragon didn't pay any attention to her. It was focused on the guards and every muscle in its body was ready to attack. Kyle's stomach dropped. This was getting out of hand very quickly. "Hey, take it easy. It's fine." He put both hands on the dragon's neck and could feel the heat rising under the scales. "I'm going to be fine. They won't hurt me. Okay, I need you to stay here and rest." Vexthor looked down at him. Kyle hadn't fully understood how smart those golden eyes were before. This wasn't just a weapon or an animal. This was a person who had feelings and thoughts and had just met the first person in their life who was nice to them. Kyle said, "I'll be back," but he didn't know if that was true. "But you have to let me go with them. Please." The dragon made a sound that sounded like a whimper. Vexthor stepped back slowly and with great reluctance. The plasma glow in its throat faded away. The tension in its muscles went away. Kyle had never asked anyone to do something so hard before, but this creature understood and did it. Kyle could hear Vexthor's roar echoing through the whole flagship as the guards led him to the exit. This time it wasn't anger. It was being alone. It was a cry of anger from a creature that had finally found someone who cared, only to have that person taken away. Kyle turned around once. Vexthor was up against the containment field, watching him go. Kyle knew for sure that things had just gotten very complicated in his life. The throne room was meant to make people feel small and weak. Dark crystal columns rose high into the air, reaching a ceiling that was lost in the shadows above. The queen's throne was on a platform that was at least 30 feet high, so anyone below had to stretch their neck to see her. There were Krythian nobles on both sides of the galleries, and their whispers echoed off the walls like 1,000 plots happening at once. Kyle was in the middle of it all, with guards with plasma rifles all around him. He had worked on a lot of alien ships and met a lot of different kinds of aliens, but this was the first time he felt so out of place. This wasn't just a different way of life. This was a lot of power that people don't usually see. And all of that power was now directed at him. Queen Velmara walked back and forth on her platform like a trapped animal. She moved quickly and angrily. Kyle had been around stressed-out officers and nervous bosses long enough to know when someone was about to panic. But queens were not supposed to get scared. They were supposed to be calm, in control, and completely sure of their power. This queen was very scared. "Tell me what you mean." The queen's voice cut through the whispers and made everyone in the room stop talking right away. "What method did you use? What kind of mental conditioning? What kind of mind control did you use on my dragon?" Kyle spread his hands to show that he wasn't a threat, even though he was surrounded by guards with guns. "I already told you, Your Majesty. I fixed the broken hydraulic coupling and talked to him in a calm way. That's all I did, really. No tricks, no mind control, nothing like that." "Not possible." A Krythian in fancy robes stepped out of the group of nobles. There were a lot of medallions on his chest, and his crown was almost as nice as the queen's. Kyle thought he was someone very important because everyone listened to him. "I am High Beastmaster Krelvor, and I have been training war dragons for 300 years. 17 generations of breeding have gone into making Vexthor only able to bond with Krythian royal bloodlines." With each word, the Beastmaster's voice got louder, full of anger and disbelief. "The psionic conditioning starts before the eggs even hatch. We fill their growing minds with loyalty imprints that are linked to royal genetic markers. Not even a lesser being should be able to get close to a war dragon without being burned to death right away, let alone make the kind of bond we all saw." Kyle shrugged and looked up at the angry alien. "I don't know anything about genetic markers or psionic conditioning. I saw a creature that was hurt and decided to help. Talk to him like he was a person, not a weapon. That's it." The whispers in the galleries got louder. Kyle heard bits of conversation in a dozen different alien languages, and his translator was having a hard time keeping up with most of them. But he didn't need a perfect translation to get the tone. These nobles were afraid. Very scared. Queen Velmara got off her throne and walked down with the same scary grace that Kyle had seen in the hangar bay. She got close enough for him to see the intricate designs carved into her crystal crown and the real fear that was behind her eyes. "You don't know what you've done, human?" It was almost a whisper when she spoke. But for some reason, it meant more than all of her earlier yelling. For 3,000 years, the Krythian Empire has been based on one truth that cannot be broken. Only people with royal blood can control the war dragons. It is the basis for my power, my right to rule, and my legitimacy. She pointed to the nobles who were watching from the balconies above. Kyle saw that some of them were leaning forward and looked like they were hungry. "Half of these noble houses would fight against my rule tomorrow if they thought that the dragons would listen to another bloodline. The Empire has had 17 civil wars because of disagreements over who should be the next ruler. Millions have died in battles over who has the strongest bond with the dragons." Kyle was beginning to get it. This had nothing to do with him. This was about a whole civilization that thought that only certain people could control their most powerful weapons. And he had just proven that idea wrong in front of dozens of people by accident. "Your Majesty, I really don't want to get involved in your politics. I work in maintenance. I fix things that stop working. That's all I know how to do. What you want doesn't matter." The Queen's royal mask slipped back into place and her voice got stronger. "You will come with me to Krythis Prime, the world where all war dragons are raised and trained. I need to know how this is possible before my enemies find out about this weakness." Kyle felt a shiver go down his spine. "And what if I say no?" Queen Velmara looked at him with cold, hard eyes. "Then you go away. Along with everyone else who saw what happened in the hangar bay today. The Beastmasters, the guards, and the technicians. Everyone. I won't let the Empire fall apart because one person is kind." The throne room was completely quiet. Kyle realized with growing dread that she meant what she said. This wasn't a lie or an empty threat. To keep her secret safe, she would kill dozens, maybe even hundreds, of people. Not because she was bad, but because she needed help. Because the other option was to watch her whole civilization fall apart. Kyle said, "You can't just kill everyone who saw what happened." But his voice came out weaker than he meant it to. "I am the Empress of the Krythian Empire. I will do whatever it takes to keep things in order." She turned away from him and spoke to the nobles in the galleries. "This person has shown a special talent for dealing with war dragons. I'm taking him to Krythis Prime to learn more. Anyone who talks about what happened today before I say it's okay will be charged with treason. Everyone in this room is included." The nobles bowed their heads to show they understood, but Kyle could see that they were making plans in their heads. They were already thinking about how to use this information to their advantage. The queen's threat might give her some time, but it wouldn't last forever. A younger Krythian noble, who looked like he was only a little older than Kyle, stepped forward. "Your Majesty, if this person can connect with dragons without royal blood, doesn't that mean?" The queen said, "It means nothing. It is an oddity. A fluke. I'll be able to control it once I know how it works." But her voice shook a little bit on that last word. Kyle heard it. The nobles heard it. Everyone in the throne room could hear the doubt. Krelvor, the High Beastmaster, cleared his throat. "Your Highness, there is one more thing. Vexthor has been given 3 doses of sedatives since the person left the containment chamber. The dragon wakes up within minutes every time and tries to break free. He is calling for the person. Everyone on the ship can hear it." A loud roar came from far away, as if it were planned. Even though the walls and distance made it hard to hear, the sound was clear. Vexthor was searching for Kyle. The dragon was upset. The queen said, "Sedate him again. We have already gone over the safe dose levels, Your Majesty. Another sedative could hurt your brain for good." The queen's hands turned into fists. Kyle saw her struggle with the choice and realized that even her strongest weapon was now out of her complete control. And it was all because one person had been nice to it for a short time. "Okay," she finally said. "Take the person to Vexthor's room. Let him calm down the dragon. Then we leave for Krythis Prime in less than an hour." Guards moved to grab Kyle's arms. He didn't fight back. What was the point? He was stuck on a foreign flagship with guards all around him, being pulled into a political situation that was way over his head. The only good thing about him was that a dragon the size of a building seemed to like him. Kyle could hear Vexthor's roars getting louder as they led him through the hallways back to the hangar bay. The dragon was aware of his arrival. The creature somehow knew he was coming, even though it was far away and behind all those walls. Queen Velmara walked next to him, and he couldn't tell what she was thinking. "You have no idea what you've done, human? After today, the Empire will never be the same." Kyle looked at her and saw something in her eyes that he didn't expect. Not just anger or fear. Something like hope. Perhaps, just maybe, a part of her was tired of using fear and conditioning to control people. Perhaps a part of her wanted to believe there was another way. But that hope was buried deep under layers of duty, desperation, and the weight of 3,000 years of tradition. They got to the hangar bay. Kyle could see Vexthor pacing in the containment chamber through the observation window. The dragon's whole world changed when it saw him. The anger went away. The noise stopped. Those golden eyes were so relieved to see Kyle that they seemed almost human. Kyle knew that his life would never be easy again. Krythis Prime was beautiful in the way that a graveyard can be. Volcanic mountains covered the surface of the planet, and they glowed red against a purple sky. The breeding complex took up the whole valley, with huge domes made of crystal and metal housing what must have been hundreds of war dragons at different stages of development. It looked like a jewel from space. It looked like a jail from the ground. A dozen guards and the queen herself led Kyle through the main building. High Beastmaster Krelvor took the lead, proudly pointing out different parts as if he were showing off some amazing piece of technology. Kyle's stomach twisted tighter with every step he took deeper into the complex. The cells were so small that the dragons could barely turn around. Kids, teens, and even babies who were still wet from their eggs. Energy fields that hummed with so much power that Kyle could feel it vibrating in his teeth strengthened each enclosure. He could see the creatures inside through the clear walls. And what he saw made him feel sick. They weren't just locked up. They were broken. "This is our conditioning wing," Krelvor said as he stopped at a window that looked out over a huge training area. "This is where we turn wild hatchlings into obedient weapons of war." Kyle saw handlers use long poles with crackling energy tips to move a group of young dragons across the arena floor. The creatures were about the same size as horses, but their scales were still soft and pale compared to Vexthor and other adults. The handlers jabbed them with the poles every time one of them moved too slowly or in the wrong direction. The dragons screamed in pain and ran to do what they were told. The conditioning process takes about 5 years, Krelvor said, not noticing how horrified Kyle looked. We start with training in how to associate pain with something else. The dragons learn that not following orders leads to pain. Then we change the times when people eat to make them feel insecure about food and dependent on it. They are desperate because they are hungry. They do what they are told because they are desperate. In another part of the building, older dragons, almost fully grown, were made to fight each other in combat pits. Kyle saw 2 of them circle each other. They were both covered in scars and moved like they were tired and had given up hope. Younger beastmasters explained with excitement. Combat conditioning makes sure they know violence is their main job. We also add random punishment rules. Sometimes they get punished even when they do everything right. This stops them from feeling like they have any control over their situation. A dragon that thinks it has no power doesn't fight back. Kyle's fists tightened. He had to make himself be quiet with his body. These people talked about torture as if it were a science. Like it was something to be proud of to break living things. They got to an observation room that looked out over the biggest room Kyle had seen so far. There were hundreds of young dragons in the space below, each one in its own holding pen. These were even younger than the others, maybe only a few months old. They should have been playing, discovering new things and learning about the world. Instead, they huddled in corners with dull eyes and broken spirits. Krelvor said, "This is our current group of trainees. 412 baby birds. We think that about 250 of them will make it through the whole conditioning program by the time they are adults." Kyle's head turned quickly. Hold on. What happens to the other 160? They fail conditioning and must be terminated, Krelvor said simply, as if he were talking about broken machines instead of people. Some people die from the stress. Some people lose their minds and are too dangerous to handle. Some people just won't break no matter how much pain we put them through. We put those to sleep. The Empire doesn't need a dragon that can't be controlled. Queen Velmara paid close attention to Kyle's face. Now you know what's at stake, human. This isn't being cruel just for the sake of being cruel. This is how we make the weapons that keep our society safe. This is how it's always been done. Kyle looked at her, then at Krelvor, and then at all the other beastmasters and handlers who were standing around looking proud of what they had done. You're hurting them. We are conditioning them, Krelvor said in a sharp voice. There is a difference. No, there really isn't. Kyle's voice shook now, and his anger was stronger than his fear. You're hurting them. You're taking these amazing animals and systematically killing everything that makes them alive until all that's left is a shell that obeys out of fear. The queen moved closer and narrowed her eyes. But somehow you made a bond with Vexthor in minutes that should have taken years of careful training. Oh, because I didn't hurt him. Kyle's voice bounced off the walls of the observation room. I made him feel important. Like his pain was important. That was all it took. One small act of basic kindness. Your Majesty, Krelvor said, the human's methods might work on a dragon that is already trained and is hurt, but they would never work on a hatchling that is not trained. Wild dragons are dangerous and hard to predict. So show me, Queen Velmara said. She pointed down at the room full of baby dragons. If your compassion is so strong, show it, human. Show me how you would get along with a dragon that hasn't been trained. Kyle looked down at the hundreds of sad animals below him. Then he turned around and looked at the queen. No. The word hung in the air like a bomb. The guards grabbed their guns. Krelvor's face turned purple with anger. The queen even looked shocked. What did you say? I said no. Kyle stood his ground even though his legs felt like they might give out at any moment. I won't help you torture dragons better. I'm not going to do this. You're doing something wrong and I won't be a part of it. You don't have a choice, human. Do what I say or... Your Majesty. A technician ran into the observation room, his face pale with fear. The hatchlings in Sector 7 are acting strangely. They aren't following any of the conditioning rules. They are all heading toward the window where they can see. Kyle looked down. The technician was correct. Dozens of young dragons had left their corners of their pens, where they had been hiding. They were pushing against the clear walls of their cages, their golden eyes searching and looking. And they were all staring straight at the observation room. Right at Kyle. Krelvor breathed, impossible. At this distance, they shouldn't be able to see through reinforced crystal. But they could. Kyle could feel it in his chest like a weight. Even after months of training and torture, these young dragons still had enough spirit to know when someone was being nice to them. The Krythians had built walls and other barriers, but they could still feel that someone in the observation room cared about their pain. More dragons started to move toward the window where people could see them. Then more. In just a few minutes, almost all of the dragons in the huge room were pressed against the walls of their cages, all of them looking at the same place. On Kyle. Queen Velmara's face had turned white. This can't be done. Kyle said softly, your conditioning program. How often does it work? Krelvor hesitated, making it clear that he didn't want to answer. She gave him a sharp look. Talk. The Beastmaster said, about 60% of them die. Another 20% become unstable and need to be killed. About 1 in 5 dragons becomes fully conditioned. Kyle said, 20% of the time it works. And you think this works? It's the only way that works. No, it's the only way you know how to do it. Your Majesty, you're not losing control because I'm special. Kyle turned to look directly at the Queen. You're losing it because you never really cared. You were scared. And fear will break down eventually. Your dragons are weak when you're scared. It kills them. It makes them unstable. You are ruining the things you are trying to make. The Queen was about to say something when an alarm went off. The observation room was filled with red emergency lights. In a panic, a communication officer rushed in and almost fell over his own feet. Your Majesty. The flagship is sending out an emergency message. Vexthor has escaped from its cage. He broke through the ship's hull and got into the planet's atmosphere. Kyle could see it through the crystal dome of the complex. A dark shape fell through the purple sky of Krythis Prime, leaving a trail of plasma fire behind it like a comet. Vexthor had crossed half of a star system, broken through military blockades, and ripped through the hull of a warship. And he was on his way here. Kyle was being chased by the dragon. In a matter of seconds, the courtyard of the breeding complex was in complete disarray. When Vexthor hit the ground, it was like a meteor, and cracks spread through the reinforced stone pavement. Guards ran in all directions, yelling orders that no one heard. Even from inside the observation building, the impact knocked Kyle off his feet. By the time he got back up, the plasma weapons were already firing. Bolts of superheated energy hit Vexthor's black scales and bounced off like water hitting hot metal. The dragon didn't seem to care at all. His huge head swung back and forth in the courtyard, and his golden eyes were frantically looking around. The guards kept shooting. Officers kept yelling orders. And Vexthor kept ignoring everything and only cared about finding one specific person. Kyle didn't think. He simply ran. He pushed through the shocked Beastmasters, pushed through the guards who were trying to stop him, and burst through the doors into the courtyard. Vexthor's head turned and locked onto him as soon as he left the building. Stop firing. Kyle yelled at the guards as he ran toward the dragon. You're just making him mad. The shooting stopped, more out of shock than obedience. Kyle Foster, a maintenance worker from Earth Station 12, ran straight toward the most dangerous war dragon in the Krythian fleet. Everyone in the courtyard saw this happen. A living weapon that could destroy cities and had just torn through a flagship and fallen through a planet's atmosphere in an uncontrolled re-entry. As soon as Vexthor saw Kyle, he moved. Not with the graceful movements of a hunter, but with the clumsy excitement of a dog who thought his owner was gone for good. The dragon jumped forward, shaking the ground with every step, and slammed his huge snout against Kyle's chest hard enough to knock the wind out of him. Kyle put his arms around Vexthor's head as far as they would go, which wasn't very far. Hey big guy, I'm fine. I'm fine. You didn't have to leave the ship and fly across the planet, but I appreciate your concern. Kyle could feel the dragon's sound vibrating through his bones. It was somewhere between a purr and a rumble. Vexthor's scales were burned from coming back in, and he had new scars on his sides from plasma weapon hits. He had hurt himself to get here. But he still came. Queen Velmara had followed Kyle outside, but she moved more slowly and her face was impossible to read. She stood at the edge of the courtyard and looked at what was going on in front of her. The dragon that had conquered solar systems was nuzzling a person like a pet looking for comfort. It was her most dangerous weapon. This isn't possible, she said, but her voice didn't sound as strong as it used to. She just sounded like she needed a break. Vexthor went through 8 planetary systems. He got past 3 military blockades. We shot him with enough firepower to stop a cruiser. He didn't pay any attention to it. This is the most independent thought that a dragon has ever shown. This level of determination. This type of love. Kyle quietly offered, still holding Vexthor's head. The queen jumped back as if he had hit her. That one word seemed to make something inside her move. She walked closer, being careful not to get too close to the dragon, which was watching her with wary eyes. I don't get it. I have been in charge for 200 years. I told my first dragon what to do before you were born. They are guns. Things you can use. Weapons of war. They are there to help the Empire. That's what they do. Kyle said, that's what they taught you. That doesn't make it true. What is the truth then? The Queen's royal calm was starting to break down, and real fear and confusion were showing through. You have shown me something I can't explain. Something that puts everything I know at risk. So go ahead and tell me. What is the real story about dragons? Kyle looked at Vexthor, then at the breeding complex behind them, where hundreds of young dragons were still watching from behind their enclosures. The truth is that you never asked if there was a better way. You just went along with torture and fear because that's how it had always been done. The Queen said quietly, my enemies will kill me if they find out what you can do. They will say I lost the royal gift. That I am not fit to lead. The Empire will break apart. There will be a war between the states. Many people will die. Or, Kyle said slowly, you could change how things work. You get real loyalty by not ruling through fear. You see the dragons as partners instead of weapons. I could show your handlers how to bond with you the right way. Training based on respect instead of torture. High Beast Master Krythian, who had followed them outside, made a strangled noise. The dragons would be less strong. Not as obedient. You would destroy 3,000 years of... Would they though? Kyle cut in and pointed at Vexthor. He just broke through 3 military blockades to get to me. Flew through gunfire that would have stopped most ships. That's not being weak. That dragon would fly through hell for someone he trusts. Someone he really cares about. Kyle stared straight at the Queen. Think about how it would be if you had a whole fleet of dragons who felt that way. Not just you but the whole Empire. About the people they keep safe. Dragons who fight because they want to and because they believe in what they are fighting for. Not because they're too scared to do what they're told. The courtyard was completely quiet. Guards, beast masters, and technicians all watched as their queen struggled with a choice that would change their whole society. Queen Velmara looked at Kyle, then at Vexthor, and finally at the breeding complex, where hundreds of dragons were waiting in their small cells. She said slowly, if I do this, if I change everything, there is no going back. The nobles will use it against me. Some people will say I'm weak. Some people will say I am going against tradition. It might cost me the throne. Kyle agreed, saying, it could. Or it could turn you into the queen who made the Empire better. Someone who was brave enough to say that the old ways were wrong and pick a new one. That's the kind of ruler that people remember. The kind that makes a difference. For a long time the Queen didn't say anything. Kyle could see her weighing the pros and cons of different options, like tradition versus innovation and power versus progress. Finally she stood up straight and that royal air came back to her. This time though it felt different. More about belief and less about control. Very good. People in the courtyard could hear her voice. I name you Chief Dragon Handler of the Krythian Empire, Kyle Foster. You will change the way we train. You will show my beast masters how to use these new methods. You will show us this better way. She stopped for a moment and something that looked like weakness crossed her face. And maybe you will teach me too. I have been in charge of dragons for 200 years, but I have never really known one. Maybe it's time I learned. It looked like Krythian was going to have a stroke. Your Majesty, this is crazy. You can't just change. Velmara said in a cold voice, I am the Queen. I can do whatever it takes to keep the Empire alive. And right now, evolution is the key to survival. Start taking apart the conditioning rooms. Make the enclosures bigger. Anyone who can't learn the new methods will be given a new job. Kyle's life got very hard in the months that followed. It was like trying to move a mountain with a spoon to change the way a whole culture did something they had done the same way for thousands of years. Some handlers were happy to use the new methods because they could finally be nice to the dragons. Others fought back hard, sure that training based on respect would make weapons weaker. One dragon at a time, Kyle showed them they were wrong. The chances of survival went from 20% to more than 90%. Dragons that people thought were too unstable to save were able to bond with gentle handling. Training time went down a lot because dragons who weren't scared learned things faster and remembered them better. The nobles who had been against the Queen's choice stopped talking when they saw the results. Some people even asked for dragon partnerships for their own families, which was against the rules before. The Empire slowly began to change, though it didn't want to. Kyle stood in the main courtyard one night, 6 months after Vexthor's dramatic landing. The breeding complex looked very different now. The small cells had been replaced with open areas where dragons could move around freely. They had melted down the torture devices. Instead of giving orders to dragons from behind energy barriers, handlers worked with them. A young Krythian woman came up to him with a dragon that was only a little bigger than a horse. The dragon rubbed its nose against her hand in a loving way, and she smiled with real warmth. Mr. Foster, I just wanted to say thank you. I have loved dragons since I was a kid, but the old system said we couldn't be nice to them. We had to hurt them. We had to hurt them every day. I hated it a lot. Kyle smiled and said, You don't have to call me master. Just Kyle is fine. And you're doing a great job. Your dragon trusts you completely. Queen Velmara came over to them, and her usual stern look softened a little. Kyle had also seen her change over the past few months. She spent hours every day working with dragons, learning how to be patient and understanding in order to really connect with them. It wasn't easy for someone who grew up with absolute authority, but she was trying. She said, The council questioned my decision at first. Now they want more dragons than we can give them. Noble houses are trying to get partnerships with each other. The military says our dragons are better in battle because they fight willingly instead of being forced to. She looked at Vexthor, who was sleeping in the sun in the evening. It looks like the Empire is learning that trust, not power, is what makes it strong. Kyle scratched behind Vexthor's ear ridge, which made the dragon's back leg twitch. Sometimes the easiest answer is the best one. You just had to get someone from outside your system to see it. Kyle thought about how strange his life had become as the 3 moons rose over Krythis Prime, painting the volcanic mountains in silver and blue. He had been a maintenance worker cleaning up coolant leaks 6 months ago. He was now changing the whole philosophy of an alien empire, one good deed at a time. Vexthor rumbled happily, and dozens of other dragons across the complex echoed the sound. Not weapons anymore. Not slaves. Partners. Buddies. People who had finally found people who loved them for who they were, not what they could do. The queen put her hand on Kyle's shoulder, which was a sign of respect that would have been impossible under the old system. You have given my empire something I didn't know we needed. A future based on loyalty instead of fear. I will always be thankful for that. Kyle smiled as he watched the young dragons play in the courtyard with their handlers, who laughed and joined in. I only fixed what was broken, Your Majesty. The same thing I've always done. This time, it just so happened to change the world. And far away, under 3 alien moons, a dragon that had once been the Empire's most dangerous weapon closed his eyes and slept soundly, knowing that he was finally loved.